question: are you currently an undergrad in the biological sciences and you're considering applying for postgraduate studies at some point? Then this video is for you. Hi there, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Aisha and I'm a PhD student at the University of Cambridge. On this channel, I document my journey through grad school with the hope to inspire anyone who is thinking of pursuing postgraduate studies either at University of Cambridge or anywhere else in the world. So if you're into postgraduate studies, cancer research, studying in the University of Cambridge and any of those good stuff, click on the subscribe button and join this community that we're growing here. We would really love to have you join us. Today's video is fairly different. As you can tell, it's not the usual vlog. I'm starting a series on my channel that I call the Postgraduate Application Series. For this series, I hope to cover so many topics that are relevant to applying for postgraduate studies, which could either be specific to the University of Cambridge or could also be applicable to other universities. The idea that I have behind this series is to put together all of the tips or all of the things that I discovered during my application process, compile those together and share it with you with the hope that it could be of help to anyone who is thinking of pursuing postgraduate studies or applying. That said, I think it's important for me to give a disclaimer that any ideas or tips that I share on this series are solely based on my experience and they are not advice from the University of Cambridge or official guidelines from any university at all. I just thought it's important that I put that out there. So today I have 10 tips that I'd like to share with you, and these tips are most ideal for people that are doing undergrad or about to start their undergraduate studies because of timeline, but of course this can also be used by people who are already far on into their academic journey. The first 5 tips are relevant when you're a couple of years before applying, so this can be when you're in your first year of your undergrad or second year, whereas the last 5 tips are more relevant to when you're nearer to the time that you want to send in your postgraduate application. So now that I've discussed the structure of today's video, now I'm going to get into the 10 tips. Tip number 1 that I would like to talk about is to pass your exams. And not just pass your exams excellently. I know that this might sound obvious, but I think that it's something that's important for me to mention as the first tip, because in most cases when we talk about postgraduate application or even applications generally, people tend to emphasize extracurricular activities, experiences and all of that. I totally understand that those things are very, very important. So the foundation of any application that you send is the core of your grades. That's the foundation, and anything else, any extracurricular activities, experiences that you gather will be on top of that. So you can imagine if you didn't get really good grades because you were focused on other stuff, to render all of your efforts almost useless. So my first tip to anyone who is starting an undergrad or far into the undergrad is that try to do your exams excellently, because they will always help you on the long run. After when we've talked about exams and stuff, now I'll go on to the second tip, which may be obvious as well, is that you should try to gain research experience as much as you can. This is specific for people who already know that research is something that they love. You will come to realize that the kind of research that you do in your academic setting is quite different from the kind of research experience that you have outside it. For me, I knew that early on, so I started to think of ways that I could gather research experiences outside what they were teaching me in my course. So for example, in my first year, I looked for a lab that was just doing anything like at that time it wasn't even really something that I was passionate about, because I knew that I liked research, right? But I wasn't specific about the type of research that I liked. I just applied to any lab basically at that time. Up until that time, I was just so used to the 1-week research project or 2-week research project that we usually have in my course. I had to write a report, I had to present the findings at the end of the internship. So all of those helped me and gave me a really good perspective. After my first year, on my second year again, I also applied for another internship by Erasmus. That was completely different, and then at the side as well, I was working as a research technician in a lab close to where I was studying, so that also again gave me another level of research experience that I needed at that time. So all of these experiences that I had, which were in completely different fields, sort of shaped my understanding of what research is like. Because it's one thing to be passionate about something and love it, but then it's another thing to not know so much about that thing, and because you don't know so much about that thing, your passion is more or less not so useful in that sense. For a PhD, and I'm sure that's the same for a master's that is research intensive, you find out that you are the driver of of your own progress, and there is no one that is going to ask you, okay, have you run this experiment, how's your data coming along? You have like vivas and exams like every maybe 6 months or every year, but no one is going to be asking you on a day-to-day basis of your progress. So if you're able to develop all of this, your leadership skills and other soft skills, through taking on different projects, you can easily apply those skills that you've gathered once you start your postgraduate studies. I'm a strong believer of not being static in terms of personal development. Try your best to find ways. It doesn't have to be something humongous. You could join a book circle club, you could be an event planner for an organization, just small things that are not part of your degree. Aside from the fact that they look nice on your CV, they also help you as a person, and they help you to just evolve into the best version of yourself. My fourth tip would be for you to maintain a good relationship with your course lecturers or professors. When you're close to your application, you realize that you need reference letters. Imagine that if you've never really made connection with any of the lecturers that you've come across along the years, it will be very hard for you to find someone who is capable of writing good letter on your behalf. A tip on how to do this would be for you to sort of show genuine interest in what they are studying. One thing that I did during my undergrad was that I would stay out after class and just to have a chat with the lecturer or the professor, ask him or her questions about what they are doing, just so they know my face, and from there we can, build a rapport or relationship. One thing I've also realized about academics is that they like to talk about their work, so you can try to start conversations about what they are doing, their research, or maybe a specific part of their presentation, and ask more questions about that. In academia, we write a lot, so I think it's important that you find ways to improve your writing skills. I can give you an example. I did a biomedicine degree, right? So my degree was very intensive in terms of we had reports back to back. So that sort of helped me improve my writing skills. But again, writing a report for your undergrad is somewhat different. The style of writing is somewhat different from writing a research paper. So that's something that I came to realize, because I mentioned earlier that in my first year, I took on my first research experience. I was supposed to produce, I think, a 20 to 30 page report. So at that time, I thought that, okay, I'm a decent writer, I get fairly good grades on the reports that I write. But then when I had the research experience and I went through the revisions that I had from my supervisor, actually my first revision, oh my god, that sort of, was just a reality check for me that, okay, girl, your writing isn't so good. If you're starting your undergraduate degree, try to take on writing opportunities as best as you can within your course and also outside of your course. And don't be too hard on yourself. Don't feel too sad when you do start writing and you notice that most of the comments or feedback that you get are not so good. Just continue, because it's a muscle. The more you do it, the better you become at it. When you write, don't just put it in a drawer and just dump it there, or get one feedback and think everything is fine. Try to get as many feedbacks as you can get from your piece, and the more feedbacks you get, the more problems people are able to spot, and the more problems that you notice, the more you are able to improve on the long run. So my sixth tip would be that you should really make sure that PhD or a master's is something that you really want to do, or is a reasonable step in your career trajectory. A good question that one can ask is that, how do I know if I want to do a PhD or a master's? You can know that you want to do a master's and not a PhD after your undergrad if you think that you need to acquire more research experience, if you are not sure about the lab that you're working in and you just want to test it out to see what the work environment is like, if you're not sure about commitment and you're not sure if it's something that you like to study for years, and also lastly, if a PhD is just not needed for the career that you're thinking about. Now that we've talked about the kind of things that would help you to decide to take on a master, things that could also help you to decide on taking a PhD directly after your undergrad. The first would be that if you're really passionate about a specific field and you don't mind tackling a problem in that field for a very long period of time, have questions and you would like the questions to be answered through your research, then you know that, okay, yeah, a PhD is something that I would enjoy. If you've gathered a lot of research experiences in the past, that you think those experiences have made you to be well prepared for undertaking a PhD, it will be easier for you to decide that you want to do a PhD after your undergrad in comparison to someone who hasn't had lots of research experiences. And the last thing is that if you have a good idea, a rough idea of how research is like, the day-to-day dealings of research in a real world. You know all of the nuances, you know like times that experiments don't work and you need to troubleshoot. If you have a rough idea of those things, you know that okay, doing a PhD is a reasonable step in your academic journey. My 7th tip will be that you should start your application as early on as possible. This is something that I feel hypocritical saying, because when I sent in my application, I did it very close to the deadline, and this is something that I will advise against. Don't leave it to the deadline. Like, the earlier you start, the better, because you will come to realize that there are lots of documents required for this, so many deadlines to keep up with. If you have an undergraduate studies that lasts for 4 years, you can start thinking about your postgrad application from your 4th year, because you know that the last 6 months of your 4 years would be dedicated to your degree thesis, and that would take you lots of time to write. So the earlier you start, if you can start thinking about this in your 3rd year ending or the beginning of your 4th year, you can start to bring all of this document together bit by bit, such that once the deadlines are coming close, you don't feel overwhelmed and you don't feel like there are tons of things that you have to achieve in such a small period of time. My 8th tip would be very similar or connected to my 7th tip, and that's dichotomize, or divide or split into half. You're going to have to submit lots of paperwork during your postgraduate application. So early on, when you're planning, try to divide this document into 2. So your first half would entail documents that you have to provide. So you know that it's your responsibility, you have your own timelines, and you know that since you have your own timelines, you for sure meet those timelines. This is a kind of document like personal statement, CV, research experiences. Then you have the other half, which are things that people need to provide for you, and these are things like reference letters, transcripts that are signed by maybe the head of the department. Once you have those written down, you know that okay, I have to follow up for these documents. And if you know that you have to follow up for these documents, you can make a timeline for yourself and set reminders on times that you would like to contact these people to provide these documents. Honestly, like, you not submitting your reference letter at the deadline is the worst feeling. I don't wish for anyone to ever experience that. So try to dichotomize and make it clear to yourself what you need people to provide for you and what you have to provide by yourself. Tip number 9 would be to apply to as many places as you can, and it's always good not to put all of your eggs in one basket. So for example, when I was applying for postgraduate studies, I think I applied to about 6 to 7 universities, because I knew that there was a chance that I wouldn't get into one program, and I just didn't want to have that risk. So as you're researching early on about the programs that you're thinking of exploring, also research about different universities, even research about different programs as well. So don't put all of your options into one university or one program. And I know that it takes a lot of time, it requires a lot of research. I can assure you that it will always pay off on the long run. My 10th tip would be to try to reach out to people who are already doing what you would like to do. You know what they say about the internet being a global village, and yeah, you can search the internet or just even in your own university. If you reach out to those people, they can share their experiences with you, and you can draw on lessons from their experience and apply it to your own application. If anyone reaches out to me about applying, I always try my best to provide all of the information that I'm able to provide. So I think generally people are nice, so don't be shy. Don't hold back. Try to reach out to people and ask them questions that you wonder about. I know that I've covered 10 tips already, but I've got one bonus tip, so chill, don't go yet. This tip is particularly for my fellow undergrads who are thinking of directly going to a PhD after their studies. Don't look down on yourself just because you're an undergraduate student. Don't downplay yourself. The fact that you're watching this video already indicates that you know that you have all what it takes to do a PhD after, especially if you know that you've been able to gather a lot of research experiences along the years, and you know that this is something that you really, really want to do. There are lots of people that get into a PhD without doing a master's, and you can do it as well. For a PhD particularly, you don't have to know every tiny detail of a specific topic. They just want people who are passionate, driven, and are capable of learning new things even under strained conditions. Don't get me wrong, doing a PhD requires background knowledge and basic skills, which I'm sure your undergrad must have helped you to attain, at least to an extent. A PhD is supposed to be a journey where you evolve through your experiences to become an expert in that field. So no one expects you to be an expert from the very beginning. No one goes into a PhD knowing it all. I know for certain that even with all of the experiences that I had gathered, I wasn't still sure of myself if I could do a PhD directly afterwards. And that's just because I sort of downplayed all of my achievements and all of the knowledge that I was able to gather through the years. If I could talk to my younger Aisha, that's what I would tell her, that don't downplay all of your achievements, don't downplay all of your experiences, and you can do it if you believe in yourself and you're willing to give it a shot. This brings me to the end of my first video in my postgraduate application series. If you found this helpful, please give me a like so that YouTube can know that this was a good video and can recommend my videos to more people. If you have specific questions about postgraduate application, whether in Cambridge or just general questions, leave it in the comment section. I hope to film a video at some point during the series to address all of the questions that I get and just have it nicely compiled into a video such that everyone can access. If you watched this video all the way to the very end, thank you so much for your support. It means a whole lot to me. I hope you remain safe and you're in the best of health. See you on my next one.